Jimbo, John Galt, January 31st, 2020. The impeachment of Donald John Trump is coming to an end. Now they want witnesses in the Senate after the House of Representatives under Adam Schiff. Nancy Pelosi's lead did not call the witnesses that they now want. This is another example of the last-minute bombshell that the Democratic playbook is notorious for. Remember when Judge Kavanaugh was being grilled by the Senate for confirmation to the Supreme Court? At the last minute, California Senator Dianne Feinstein pulls out this letter that I just happen to have in my back pocket talking about something from 40 years ago when Judge Kavanaugh was in high school, saying that a woman was raped by Judge Kavanaugh. She's sure of it. Same thing here. They're trying to pull the same BS that they did in the Kavanaugh hearing on Donald J. Trump's impeachment because they know they don't even have a case. So now they're saying that John Bolton, his national security advisor, who was fired, forced to resign, is coming out with a book that he can't even publish because it has state secrets in it. It's classified information, has not gone through the proper channels to even be approved to be published. But yet the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Amazon Washington Post, and Amazon, the bookseller, all released at the exact same time pre-order sales and announcement of this book that was going to reveal that Trump knew and told Bolton specifically, that there was a quid pro quo saying that the Bidens must be investigated or that foreign aid, $400 million plus, would not be released unless the Bidens were investigated. Bolton hasn't confirmed that, hasn't said anything about it. In fact, I think he's over in Abu Dhabi making some speeches for hundreds of thousands of dollars. The impeachment of Donald Trump is to cover the bipartisan corruption, from Obama election tampering to all of them, the Republicans and the Democrats, stealing at every turn, from foreign aid to stamps in the post office. The impeachment, Article 2, Section 4 of the Constitution states, the President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. That says it all. The president has not been accused of any of these crimes. What he is accused of by the House Democrats is abuse of power, not a crime. Obstruction of Congress, again, not a crime. It doesn't have to be a crime. The impeachment part of the Constitution is very vague. The House can go and say, we're going to impeach you on whatever we want. File these articles of impeachment, get their votes to move it out of whatever committee and into the full House, which the Democrats control in 2019. So they were able to get it out by a simple majority. Hamilton and the other founders did not want impeachment to be used this way. They specifically said in the Federalist Papers that they didn't want what they considered maladministration. And maladministration means a policy difference. Because we did foreign relations in this case, they don't like Trump the outsider, what he's doing. So they're coming up with all these cockamamie excuses to get him out. Since day one, they were trying to come up with a reason, whether it was Russian collusion, which was proven to be a hoax, down to this Ukrainian phone call, which was perfect. It was a perfect phone call. You can read it. The maladministration, the deep state agency consensus wants to control our foreign relations with these countries. Why? Because that's where these guys, all these establishment career bureaucrats, make all their money. They move through the revolving door in government positions, and then they go into consulting. Then they go into lobbying. They go into political lobbying. They have to register under FARA, but most of them don't even do that until they get caught. Trump is being railroaded. It's another hoax, but because they have the mainstream media telling their story, it's all in unison. The general public that goes to work every day and lives their lives, they do not have the time to pay attention to it, so they believe the headline. Treason is defined as an attempt to overthrow a government to which he owes allegiance, or to kill the sovereign. Bribery is defined as money or favor given to influence conduct of a person in position of trust. Trump wasn't accused in the articles of impeachment from the House. Neither one of those, treason nor bribery, were in the articles of impeachment. Wonder why? Remember back during the House hearings, they were word shopping all of these different things to see what resonated with the public. None of them did. So what'd they come up with? Abuse of power, obstruction of Congress. I'm going to dig into the obstruction of Congress for the simple fact that it exposes Schiff, Pelosi, Nadler, the outright contempt that they have for anybody that calls them on their illegality. They're accusing Trump of obstruction of Congress when they didn't even call the witness that they're saying that Trump wouldn't allow under executive privilege to not testify. John Bolton in particular. They went to John Bolton, and he went to court himself, John Bolton did, and said, Judge, they're going to come at me. What do I do so that I know how to respond to this? They withdrew that subpoena for John Bolton to testify. Now they're coming back in the Senate, which is the deliberative chamber of Congress, to deliberate on what the House of Representatives, does in their case in chief, which is the investigatory chamber. House of Representatives does the investigation. The Senate, the deliberation on the evidence as presented by those House managers, Schiff et al. The obstruction of justice that they're accusing Donald Trump of is you don't have due process rights. You don't have the right to say, I don't want to succumb to your subpoena. And the normal process would be to go to the Supreme Court. Go through the court process, let the judge decide yes or no whether or not that person has to testify. If Bolton did have to testify, if he had to show up to the hearing, Trump's lawyers, the White House lawyers, could be there and say, we're executing executive privilege because the questions that you're asking revolve around the president's thinking on executive privilege conversations. Every president of the United States since George Washington has used executive privilege to not have all of his deliberations, all of his mindset exposed. Bolton could be asked about what Trump thought about foreign leaders. Nobody wants that information out there because now foreign leaders aren't going to speak openly. And the president won't be able to rely on his aides, on his advisors, if he knows that they can be questioned and all of those private conversations must be released. It's the straight-faced, bold lie that Adam Schiff and the rest of the Democrats will stand up there day after day and make a case. Their arguments do not pass the straight-face test. The straight-face test is when you have an argument and not even you making the argument can keep a straight face because you know it's so fallacious. That's the first thing they teach you in law school about ethics. Do not make a fallacious argument that you know isn't true just because it's the only thing that you have. You have to have some honor. And what it boils down to, Schiff and the rest of these Democrats have no honor. They know, they have to know that what they're arguing is ludicrous. But they do it anyhow because they have Trump derangement syndrome. They can't take the fact that he beat them at their own game. And he's exposing them for the frauds that they are and the thieves that they are. This is a smokescreen. We have Joe Biden on tape admitting to firing the Burisma investigator who is exposing his son, Hunter Biden, and his corruption in Ukraine. He's on tape saying, son of a bitch, I got him fired. Nobody in the mainstream media or anywhere else even brings that up. I think they're going to start to because he's failing in the smokescreen of his presidential campaign. The whole reason that Joe Biden ran was to run cover for himself, to say, you can't investigate, you can't come after me as a presidential candidate because that's going to look bad on you, Justice Department under Donald Trump. There's a book by Peter Schweitzer, Profiles in Corruption, and Schweitzer goes through talking about how corrupt Joe Biden is. Joe Biden actually did what they're accusing Donald Trump of doing on a massive scale, not just in Ukraine, but Ukraine for this example because that's what they're accusing him of. Biden's entire family, from his son, his daughter, and his 3 brothers, are all wrapped up in the government largesse, private contracts that were directly related to Biden's relationship with these countries. The other thing that is directly related is none of these people had any experience in the companies or the industries that they got these contracts, that their businesses got their contracts. Sticking just to Hunter Biden, because that's the one that keeps coming up with Burisma. Joe Biden's son was being investigated by our own State Department. And Joe Biden went in and quietly made it go away. At one point, he said, I don't have time to discuss this potential conflict of interest. Just having a conflict of interest at that State Department level was enough to have either Joe Biden recuse himself or to tell his son, Hunter, don't take this job. You know you shouldn't be taking this job. They're using you. And that's the point. Joe Biden didn't care that they were using his son. All Joe Biden cared about was making sure that Hunter Biden got rich under his name. The due process violations that Trump has had to suffer under, and Trump is doing it silently, even though he knows that it is completely one-sided. It's been rigged from the beginning. Schiff did it in the basement, something called the SCIF, a sensitive compartment information facility. Under the Intelligence Committee, instead of what is normally done for impeachments, under the Judiciary Committee. It started off with the Judiciary Committee under Jerry Nadler, but Jerry Nadler botched the hearings so much that Nancy Pelosi pulled them and gave it to Adam Pinocchio Schiff. He immediately went down into the SCIF so that he could control the narrative about what got released. When you're in a SCIF, again, sensitive compartment information facility, in the basement of the House, inside the SCIF, Schiff and the SCIF, didn't allow any cross-examination by the Republicans. There was one ambassador in particular that told the truth, and that's the one transcript that wasn't leaked. Everything else, Schiff had a way of leaking to the press. He'd come out and selectively say certain things that were going to be coming, just like he did during the Russian hoax. Remember when every night on CNN, MSNBC, even at the beginning on Tucker Carlson on Fox, he came out and said, oh yeah, we've got a bombshell coming out. We have more than circumstantial evidence that Trump was in Putin's pocket. When the Mueller report came out, it exonerated Trump completely and exposed the anti-Trump people for their corruption. Schiff read a falsehood into the record when Trump released the actual transcript of the telephone calls with the Ukrainian president. And nothing happened to him. Oh, he said he was just doing a parody. You don't do a parody when you're reading something into the House record. That's how blatant, that's how pathetic Adam Schiff is. And the fact that all of these people, the cabal of the news agencies, the government agencies, the House of Representative Democrats, don't call him and say, enough is enough already. You've got to stop doing this. You're ruining the party, let alone the country. The Republicans are fighting finally. Not because they like Trump. There are so many rhinos that can't stand the fact that Trump is in there, but they know that if Trump loses, that their party is going to be out in the pasture forever. So they have to align with Trump in this case, even though they don't want to. Mitt Romney, a despicable mittens that he is, at least he's honest about it, where he's probably going to vote for more witnesses and he's probably going to vote to impeach the guy, to convict him in the Senate. But most of the Republicans are standing up. You've got Jim Jordan. You've got a bunch of, like a handful of these guys, Nunes in the House and the Senate, that are standing up. Unfortunately, you've got Murkowski, you've got Collins, and the aforementioned Romney don't care about anything except wetting their beak, getting what they can get, whether it's reelected or getting their relatives and friends into big money contracts. It came out of the House of Representatives with the Democrat majority. It was not bipartisan. It was completely partisan. First time in U.S. history that we had an impeachment based along party lines. It's going to be the same thing. It's going to be the same thing, only different, when we have a full vote. I don't think they're going to get the votes to get more witnesses, which procedurally it's wrong. The Republicans also know that if they go down this path, that it's going to be an abomination on the entire process, more than Schiff has already created procedurally. They're not going to get the votes for more witnesses. They're not going to get the votes to convict. It's 67. They need 2/3 of all sitting members present, I think, in order to convict. They're not going to get any Republicans other than Romney to convict. They might even get a lot of Democrats in purple states to vote with the Republicans. So it might be bipartisan on that part for the Republicans, showing that this impeachment scandal, this is a scandal, but not with Trump creating the scandal, the establishment creating the scandal. The actual charge that they're trying to fashion all of these legal documents and these BS arguments over is that the Ukrainians didn't get $430 million in aid unless they investigated the Bidens on Trump's behalf. The Ukrainians didn't even know that the aid was delayed. They didn't know about it until they read it in the press. In fact, Donald Trump is a corruption fighter, and he stopped aid, delayed aid in multiple countries, hundreds of millions of dollars, to find out that we weren't wasting our taxpayer dollars. He had an initiative. He said, review all aid, and it was 2 years ago. In fact, the Javelin anti-tank missiles that Obama never gave were never delayed. He gave those to them. The mainstream media make the Democrat sophist arguments a reality, and that gets taken as fact by the distracted public. This has got to stop, and I think it is stopping. November of 2020, Trump is going to steamroll into one of the biggest electoral college landslides in history. This March or April, hopefully at the latest April, Bill Barr and John Durham are coming out with their reports. They have impaneled grand juries on multiple cases, and when this stuff starts to hit the fan, you're going to see Comey, Clapper, Brennan, Strzok, Page, the rest of the uppers at the FBI and the intelligence agencies. They will be looking for lawyers, looking for depends, because they are in it. They are going to be exposed. And I'm going to end it right here, seeing that it's Friday, January 31st, 2020, going into the Super Bowl between the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers. I don't think that Mitch McConnell should allow the senators or the House managers and the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court to have a nice leisurely weekend, giving them a day off. I think that they should be inconvenienced just a little bit, since Donald J. Trump has had his presidency completely inconvenienced. And the State of the Union is Tuesday. President Trump should have a clean acquittal before the State of the Union. At this point, it looks like they're going to be coming back on Wednesday to hold this sham vote for this sham impeachment. Have a nice weekend, everybody. See you next week with a fully acquitted Donald J. Trump.